Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, रामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गौ गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिवर्धन की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, नवद्वीप धाम की जय, स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय, गंगा माई की जय, जमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Mother, my humble obeisances. Thank you for coming today.
Hare Bo Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mother. How are you?
I am always so very grateful, very, very grateful to be in this Sangha. This is my favorite Sangha, and I thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Mother. Thank you. We put the verse on the screen so we can start, please.
I see Kirtan Ras.
Yes.
Hare good morning. Hare Krishna Kamaniya. Hare Bo. Loka. Wow. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll start with the verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 14. No worries. Antashta Sarvabhutanam Atma Yogeshwaro Hari Swamaya Vrinod Garbham Vairatya Kurutatave Tantave. Antasta, being within, Sarva, all, Bhutanam, of the living beings, Atma, soul, Ishvara, the Lord of all mysticism, Hari, the Supreme Lord, Swamayaya, by the personal energy, Avrinot, covered, Garbham, embryo, Varatya, of Uttara, Kurutantave, or the progeny of Maharaj Kuru. Srila Prabhupada's translation: the Lord of Supreme Mysticism, Sri Krishna, resides within everyone's heart as the Paramatma. As such, just to protect the progeny of the Kuru dynasty, he covered the embryo of Uttara by his personal energy. Srila Prabhupada's purport, he says, the Lord of Supreme Mysticism can simultaneously reside within everyone's heart, or even within the atom, by his Paramatma feature, his plenary portion. Therefore, from within the body of Uttara, he covered the embryo to save Maharaj Parikshit and protect the progeny of Maharaj Kuru, of whom King Pandu was also a descendant. Both the sons of Dhritarashtra and those of Pandu belong to the same dynasty of Maharaj Kuru. Therefore, both of them were generally known as Kurus. But when there were differences between the two families, the son of Dhritarashtra were known as Kurus, whereas the sons of Pandu were known as Pandavas. Since the sons and grandsons of Dhritarashtra were all killed in the Battle of Kurukshetra, the last son of the dynasty is designated as the son of the Kuru. Om Gana Timirandasya Gana Gana Shalakaya Chakshuromilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarabhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahalalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Japate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namashtute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusata Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Vipasindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasatyade Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shitatmane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Iti Namine Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation again. The Lord of Supreme Mysticism, Sri Krishna, resides within everyone's heart as Paramatma. As such, just to protect the progeny of the Kuru dynasty, he covered the embryo of Uttara by his personal energy. So once again, I want to thank the devotees, especially Kusha Prabhu, for being so consistent in offering the service to the devotees, and Salika Prabhu in Nigeria. I want to thank you both, and I'm just really grateful that I can be here with everyone that's participating. I thank you so very much for being here. So we've been hearing this pastime, beautiful, beautiful pastime of how Krishna protects his devotees. This is a section where we're hearing a lot about Krishna being Bhaktavatsal. He takes care of his devotees. Krishna explains that to us in so many, many, many places. And especially in the Bhagavad Gita, we have many references of how Krishna protects his devotees. And so in this verse, there's a word that is used by Krishna. He says, it says Avranut in this verse. And this Avranut means covered. And there's another word, Garbha, the embryo was covered. And so this covering, Krishna, he covers the conditioned souls, and sometimes he covers his pure devotees. And he covers his pure devotees in a way that helps us to understand and to learn from these pure devotees. So in the beginning of the text, Prabhupada mentions in his translation, the Lord of Supreme Mysticism, Sri Krishna, resides within everyone's heart as a Paramatma. So Krishna is the supreme mystic. And oftentimes when we hear this word mystic, it somehow brings, so many different visions of what that could possibly mean. And so the Vedic scriptures gives us clear understanding of this word mystic. And we can understand it from the point of the yogis, when we talk about the yogis and them having mystic powers. We can understand that the yogis, they have 8 different mystic potency, 8 different mystic powers. And those mystic powers that the yogis have, those powers, they have achieved these powers, oftentimes because they have performed great austerities. And so the Lord, Krishna, in his magnanimous personality, he benedicts those that perform austerities in different ways. And so one of the in terms of austerities of the yogis, they can achieve these mystic cities. Now, when we talk about mystic, usually mystical persons, mystical personalities, they defy the law of nature. In other words, they can subtly interact with the laws of nature. They can manipulate the laws of nature because they've been gifted with these cities, these mystic cities. And so one of these mystic cities is Anima. And that is a city, it's a power where a yogi can reduce in size. They can reduce their bodily size, sometimes even to the size of the atom. And they can become smaller than the smallest. Bhagavatam gives us some examples of that. Hanuman had reduced the size of his body while he was searching for Sita, for example. He made himself very, very small. And so it's not that these cities do not exist. However, we want to remember this verse is talking about the Lord of supreme mysticism, the supreme mysticism. At the same time, we understand that Krishna has given different people different kinds of powers. And so there's another city that's called Mahima city. And that's where someone can assume a very gigantic form. They can become bigger, larger, as described in Bhagavatam. That these personalities, they can grow unlimitedly, and we know some of those personalities from reading stories in the Krishna book. And so an example of this Mahima city, again, we look at Hanuman. When Hanuman, he assumed this huge form, he grew so big that so that he could burn Lanka, right? Remember this pastime in the Ramayana. And he also assumed this big form so that he could fight with Kumbhakarna, right? Hanuman, he had all kinds of mystic powers. And then we see how Varaha, how he increases form so gigantic, right? He was this big boar. And then we also see how Vamana, there's so many different pastimes. There's so many different pastimes of these different, of course, Vamana was a supreme personality of Godhead. However, this is often the cities that, different people may have this city. And then the city of Lagima. And I'm just going to share a few of these just so we can get familiar with the fact that there are very powerful people. There are very powerful personalities. So this Lagima city, someone can become that person is able to make their body very light, extremely light, become lighter than the lightest, right? So they're really into levitation and flying in the air. And, we sometimes have heard of personalities like this. We hear people are flying in the sky and we wonder, is this really real? Well, yes, it is. It is very, very real. There are definitely these powers that people can have. And then there's some different types of powers in the Bhagavatam also that are like supernatural powers. These powers that people have and these personalities are conditioned personalities. They can have powers of knowledge, of past, present, and future. They can have knowledge of knowing other people's moods. They can sometimes become undisturbed by hunger, thirst, and other bodily cravings. We remember in the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj, how Dhruva Maharaj, he was unaffected by anything. He didn't have to eat. He didn't, he was meditating because he wanted to see the Lord. He wanted to have this darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so he performed he had these kind of mystic cities, and he didn't need to eat anything. He didn't need to do anything. So there are, in the material realms, there are personalities that have many different kinds of mystic cities, mystic powers. I mean, there are people, even today, we know of people that can, they have memories of their past lives. This is considered a kind of a mystic power in one sense. There are people that are clairvoyant. There are people we know that can levitate even now. People can sometimes, they have the ability to choose to be born in a certain womb. This is all there. It's all a part of the material energy, the Mahatattva. So it's important to understand that these supernatural powers they're not so great in one sense, because Krishna is the supreme mystic, Yogeshwara. This is what's being explained in this text, that Krishna is Prabhupada explains that Yogeshwara, the Lord of all mysticism. So Krishna, he is the supreme mystic. He is within everyone's heart. And at the same time, the Lord can, in this particular pastime, he can be on his chariot, and he can be leaving. In this pastime, he's leaving, going to Dwarka. And we know that the Pandavas are there. They're all there. Queen Kunti is getting ready to offer her prayers. And we know that this is the part of the pastime where Uttara has, ran to Krishna because she's seeing this glaring light of the Brahmastra, and she, of course, doesn't know what it is. And so with this glaring light that she's seeing and this burning in her womb, she runs to Krishna. And we understand that Krishna is on the chariot. Krishna is on the chariot, while Uttara, is pleading to Krishna that this is happening, and we will learn of this mystic power called Krishna himself. He assumed this very small form in her womb. So why am I speaking about these kinds of mystic powers? Why is that important? What is important? And I was thinking about that in this verse as I read through this verse. What is important in this verse, and what's important in this pastime? Well, a couple of things. There are many lessons in these different in this pastime and different aspects of this pastime. For example, we've heard from many of the different speakers that give different aspects of looking at this pastime, with Krishna and his dear devotees, and how he protects his dear devotees, Krishna's Bhaktavatsal. And we've heard from some of the speakers. For example, I listened to the class of Bhakti Chirudesha Maharaj, and it was interesting to hear the perspective that he was sharing. He was sharing the perspective of Uttara, of course, protecting the child, wanting to protect the child in her womb, and how she didn't really care. Uttara it wasn't that she was caring so much about herself. She was more caring about the child that she was carrying within her womb. And so he went in depth talking about, in the conditioned consciousness of people on this planet, that people tend to, especially women, they sometimes engage in abortions. And so he went in depth about that. And he went in depth about explaining how Uttara, a devotee of the Lord, has a different perception. She has a different way in how she thinks, right? She would not think to abort a child. And so this brings me to talking a little bit about Uttara. Let's look at Uttara. Who is this Uttara? Why is Uttara so glorious? And she is spoken about in the Bhagavatam, right? This young girl. Uttara wasn't more than maybe 16 years old. 16, yeah, at that time when she approached Krishna. Because remember, when she and Abhimanyu got married, Abhimanyu, he was like 16. I remember Arjuna, Abhimanyu's father, he was teaching Uttara dance, right? And then Uttara's father offered Uttara to to Arjuna. He offered Uttara to Arjuna for marriage. And Arjuna at the time said, no, she's too young. No, she's too young. However, I have the perfect person for her. My son, Abhimanyu. And we know that Subhadra and Arjuna had this child, Abhimanyu, only son. And so he offered Abhimanyu as a partner in marriage for Uttara. And it's explained that, like teenagers, they were so affectionate with each other. They were so caring with each other. Those of you that, Kirtan Ras, I think he's not a teenager anymore. However, those of you that can remember your teenage years, maybe you can remember a little bit of what that was like. There's even in a conditioned state, right? In those young years, there's some kind of affection when young people get together. So just imagine, these devotees of the Lord, they're very affectionate in a very transcendental way because they have full knowledge, right, of Krishna as their guide, their protector. And of course, Abhimanyu, he's the son of Arjuna. And so, of course, Arjuna always having this association of Krishna, Abhimanyu is very aware of this. And so it's explained that in the Mahabharata that Abhimanyu and Subhadra, you couldn't separate them, that they would spend time talking to each other all the time. And they often talked about the fact that Abhimanyu would have to go fight this war. There was a point when they hadn't yet decided whether they would fight the war or not. Actually, Krishna was trying to negotiate. He was trying to mediate. However, as we share in the past time, Duryodhana would not accept this mediation from Krishna. Just imagine, even in those days, mediation was not accepted. So Duryodhana would not accept Krishna mediating on behalf of the Pandavas. And so that's why they went to war. Krishna was trying to, stop them from going to war. And so Abhimanyu, being the son of Arjuna, the Kshatriyas, they knew they needed to go to war. And so therefore, Abhimanyu was constantly speaking with his wife, young Subhadra, these young kids, they're talking, I'm going to have to go. And he was young enough that it could have been decided for him not to go. Actually, he could have not gone. He could have stayed in the camp. However, Subhadra understood he's a Kshatriya. That's his duty. He's got to fight. She understood that from a very young age. And so she and Abhimanyu, they were so very close. And so when Abhimanyu had to leave, when Abhimanyu left to go, to war, then of course Subhadra was left with this child in the womb. So she had this deep affection for this child because she understood that her husband may come back or not come back because that's war. And, you can get killed. And she fully was aware of that. So she had this even more of a protective mood of a mother for this child in her womb. And so this is, we've heard, as I said, we've heard many of the speakers share about the Brahmastra and, how Krishna, he protected the Pandavas from Abhiman, from Ashwatthama's sending the Brahmastra weapon. And we learned so much from all of these speakers about this weapon and what it, what it is, who it is, this Brahmastra, and how, Ashwatthama, in this mood, Ashwatthama also, he was very, actually, he wasn't that old himself. He was quite young, and he really wanted to please his father. He really wanted to be seen as a personality that did something wonderful. However, as His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Maharaj says often, we can often do the right thing in the wrong way, or we can do the wrong thing in the right way. So in the case of Ashwatthama, his desire to please and his desire to be seen and his desire to be accepted, he did the wrong thing. And that created so much disaster in the whole family. And so here we are in this part of the pastime now, where the Lord Krishna has to now make himself, available for this young girl that's now come to him. And if we could just visualize this scene of Krishna, he's getting ready to leave. Everybody's sad because nobody wants Krishna to leave, right? At the same time, Krishna has to leave because Krishna is winding down his pastimes. And so, at least in this part of this part of his relationship with the Pandavas. And so here, Uttara, this young girl, 16, as I said, maybe no more than 16 or 17, she runs to Krishna and she's pleading to Krishna. And Krishna is, he knows that what's going on, and that's been explained by some other speakers so in depth. He fully understood what was going on. Ashwatthama had sent up Brahmastra to kill this child. Ashwatthama, he was very determined, kind of Kshatriya personality that was doing something in the wrong way, just had all this determination. And so even though he was spared, his life was spared by the Pandavas, and even though he tried to kill the Pandavas, and even though he killed all these sons, and still, here he is again trying to kill the child in the womb. And so, so Krishna, of course, Krishna always protects his devotees, right? We understand that from so many verses in Bhagavad Gita, as I shared, where Krishna protects his devotees. And so now Krishna is going to enter into the womb of Uttara. So Krishna is sitting on the chariot. He's sitting on the chariot. The Pandavas are there. Mother Kunti is there. He's engaged in getting ready to hear Kunti's prayers. Uttara runs up and tells him what's going on. Krishna knows, because Krishna knows everything, right? Krishna knows everything that's going on with all of us. And then Krishna then becomes, he becomes this personality within the womb of Uttara. And by the mercy of, I think, Ganga Prasad Prabhu, I listened to Ganga Prasad's class, and it was really sweet. Ganga Prasad Prabhu, I just want to say that you referenced, and I was very happy to see that, you referenced how when Krishna appeared in the womb of Uttara, that how we can understand this personality Krishna, because in later text, it's explained how Krishna looked. How is Krishna in the womb of Uttara? And so this is just so, it's just so amazing how Bhagavatam is laid out for us, right? As we continue to read, that's why Prabhupada says, start reading from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, because as we read through the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we learn so much more. So I would have not thought, Prabhu, to specifically just get this, how the description of Krishna. I would not have thought that unless I had listened to Ganga Prasad's class. I would have not have thought to speak about that description. And this description is just so beautiful that I just have to mention the description of Krishna as he's sitting on the chariot, as he's there with the Pandavas, as Kunti is getting ready to pray to him, because nobody wants him to leave. And he's now entering into the womb of Uttara. He's there in the womb of Uttara. She's protecting Maharaj Parikshit in the womb from this burning Brahmastra. And Prabhupada explains that the Lord is like thumb high, right? Like thumb high. So he's this big in the womb of Uttara. And he was all transcendental, right? So when we talk about transcendental, we understand that that's very different from the conditioned state or how we might perceive things in our conditioned consciousness. So transcendental, Satchitananda Vigraha. Then this is what's so beautiful. He had a very beautiful, blackish, infallible body. And he wore a dress of lightning yellow and a helmet of blazing gold. Thus he was seen by the child. He was seen by Parikshit Maharaj in the child. And I won't go into that because Ganga Prasad talked about that so much. And so I just wanted to focus on this small thumb-like person that have all of these features, right? So when we talk about mysticism, it's very important to understand mysticism in its perfection. So in its perfection, in its perfected power, it is only there with Krishna. That's why Krishna is called Yogeshvara. He's the supreme mystic. Oftentimes, we get a little bit carried away in conditioned life about the mysticisms that we might see from the yogis, which is great. Very wonderful mystic potency they have. Even people in this world have many mystic potencies. Even people that might be around you, in your daily life might have some mystic potency that you might wonder, where did this come from? What is this? How can these people do this? Sometimes they use it for good and sometimes not for good. And we all know this. This is all only because of the mercy of Krishna, because Krishna has this mystic potency, this mystic, Krishna is the culmination of all of these mystic potencies. And so in further explanation about Krishna as this thumb-sized person in the womb of Uttara, he was enriched with 4 hands. He had earrings of gold and eyes like blood red with fury because Krishna is angry. You're getting ready to kill my devotee. What's wrong with you, Aswatthama? You can't do this. And so he's protecting this child in the womb. And he's very, very upset that someone would even try to do this, right? And it was heinous what was being done, because as we learn from some other pastimes, for example, the pastime when, and I believe somebody else talked about this with Narada Muni taking care of the wife. I can't remember exactly how this pastime works out, but anyway, I know some of you there understands the pastime. But in any case, the point I'm making is that usually when a demon wants to kill somebody that's devotional, that's devoted, a child that's coming, they wait until after the child is born. Usually they wait, right? They wait. Even Kamsa, he waited. He didn't try. He could have killed Devaki. He could have done so many things, but he waited for those children to be born before he killed them. And also the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj, I believe it's Prahlad Maharaj. I can't remember his name, but one of those personalities. They just waited. They didn't try to kill the child in the womb. So this was unheard of. That here is this personality that's sending this weapon to kill this child within the womb, right? And so therefore, Krishna had this blood red eyes because he was angry, and his club was like Prabhupada explains, it was like a shooting star, that this club that he had in his hand in the small thumb-like size. And so the Lord, it's explained, Prabhupada is explaining that the Lord was engaged in this activity where he's going to now vanquish the radiation of the Brahmastra. And Prabhupada gives this beautiful, there's just this beautiful analogy, so to speak, or this beautiful metaphor in one sense, maybe it's a metaphor, where he gives us a visual. He says, just like the sun evaporates a drop of dew. So we've seen that, we've seen dew on the grass, and we see how quickly, when the sun comes out, it just dries it up, right? And so in this mood, Krishna, he was there just protecting this child in the womb. And so, so this pastime is just such a beautiful, beautiful pastime for us to learn. So what is it that we're to learn from this pastime? What is relevant, especially in this verse? What's really relevant? And so here we look at this word. We're going back to this word where Krishna says here, avrinat, covered, and guham, the embryo is covered. And so for the conditioned soul, let's look at this word. Avrinat there, covered, and garbham, the womb of Uttara. So let's look at this word from the Bhagavad Gita, right? For conditioned souls. For conditioned souls, in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in text 38, I believe, 338, that word is used, avrita garbham, and it's also covered, right? And it's also covered, the embryo is covered. And so for the conditioned soul, Prabhupada explains, as fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. So we are covered, right, by lust, the conditioned souls, because Prabhupada explains that once we enter into these material realms, that we immediately become covered by these different desires to control, desires, to have, again, some of mystic potency, mystic powers. We get covered by so many material desires. And so Prabhupada is explaining to us that this covering of the womb for the conditioned soul, it's a condition that we all need to become, aware of. And we're all aware, as aspiring devotees, we are aware that when as soon as a child enters into the womb, and Prabhupada explains this in the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in the Divine and the Demoniac, as soon as a child enters into the womb, the child starts taking on different values, different characteristics, right, from the parents, from whatever is going on with the parents. And so this is why Prabhupada recommends that as soon as as soon as two people decide to have a child, as soon as they, have this connection to have a child, then it's important to understand that child has to be started to be nurtured in the womb by transcendental sound vibration. Because just in the very beginning, and Bhakti Charideshwar Maharaj, he spoke about this quite a bit, just in the very beginning, as soon as the child enters, the child starts having some awareness, minimal. However, there's some awareness that's there. And then in the next verse of the Bhagavad Gita, the 339, that word is there again, right? So Krishna wants us to understand this every time. He wants us to understand this word. And here it's being explained in 339. It's those of you that are scholars. Again, it's explained. Every time covered, jnanam, pure consciousness. So here again, it's explained our pure consciousness, who we are. We are pure spirit souls. That pure consciousness again is covered. It becomes covered in the material world. So Prabhupada explains here, thus the wise living entities, pure consciousness, their pure consciousness become covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. And I see this so often. I often work with different people in terms of their emotional challenges. And I often see the attachment that so many people have, to different, maybe to other personalities, because oftentimes that's it, right? We're attached to other personalities. And so many times you can see that people have different kinds of as Prabhupada explains here, that the consciousness can be covered with so many different desires, so many unlimited desires that comes from lust. And I can see how oftentimes that these desires are not satisfied. And I can see how they burn like fire. And when I look at my own self, I don't have to think about me helping or working with other people. I think of myself, and I thank my spiritual master, my revered spiritual master, His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Maharaj, for giving me the knowledge, giving me the opportunity to have this knowledge, to understand how even me, myself, have been in situations where, that mood of never being satisfied, wanting something so badly, and it burns like fire. And it's only because of the mercy of the spiritual master. It's only by the mercy of the devotees that I can say, oh yeah, I understand that. And I understand how, as we practice Krishna consciousness, how as we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, as we associate with devotees, as we hear the scriptures, that this lust gets minimized, right? It gets minimized, it becomes less and less and less and less. And we become more satisfied by hearing Krishna Katha. We become more satisfied by chanting. Maybe somebody needs to be on mute. And so then, so the last place that I saw this word, this avritaha, covered, how the conditioned soul is covered, is that every endeavor is covered by some fault, right? Just as fire is covered by smoke. And that's in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 1848. Again, covered. We, as conditioned soul, it's a different kind of covering. So in this chapter, the 18th chapter, 1848, Prabhupada Krishna explains to Arjuna, every endeavor is covered by some fault, every endeavor, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. Right? So every endeavor is covered by some fault. Again, that word, covered. And so here, what is the difference between these coverings of the conditioned soul and the covering of the of Uttara, of the womb, of Maharaj Parikshit in the womb? It explains that, in this text that that in the womb it was the embryo in the embryo, it was covered, but it was covered by Krishna's personal energy, by Krishna, the supreme mystic, Krishna Yogeshwara, right? It was covered by Krishna's affection and Krishna's love for his devotees. And so there's a different covering for the devotees of the Lord. There's a different way that Krishna interacts with his devotees. That covering is not the same. It's not a covering of lust. It's a covering of love. It's a covering of love. It's always back to Deirdre March. He writes this book, From Lust to Love, right? And how we experience this love. How do we experience this love? Again, referencing Ganga Prasad Prabhu, he says it's by surrendering, right? It's by giving up our own personal desires, giving up our desires, giving up our lusty desires. That is there, that has us covered, have our pure consciousness covered. And so Uttara, this young 16-year-old girl, her covering was for this love that she had for Krishna. So this child in her womb, she knew she had to protect this child, right? Because of the love that she had for her husband, Abhimanyu, for the love that she had for this family, and for the love that she knew that Krishna himself, she loved Krishna. She had faith in Krishna. She understood that Krishna, she was resolute in purpose when she went to Krishna, because she knew that Krishna would protect her. She understood that. So what am I to learn from this verse? This is what I always say. What is it that I need to learn from this verse? What is it that is important to me? What is important to me? So what's important to me in this verse is, yes, Krishna is the supreme mystic. And that Krishna, we have pastimes. We have so many pastimes of so many other personalities with mysticism, mystic potency. We have Punjaka, we have Salva, we have Denakasura, we have all these demons. We have Agasura, we have Trinavarta. His body was so huge, so heavy, right? So many different personalities, so many different kinds of mystic potency. But could they protect the womb? Could they have protected the child in the womb of Uttara with the love and affection that Krishna did? No. So yes, so what am I to learn? What am I to learn in this text? I am to learn that a 16-year-old girl can teach us so many things. That a 16-year-old girl can teach me that in her mood of surrendering to Krishna, that was a mood of pure love, pure affection, pure understanding that Krishna will protect her, pure acceptance that Krishna will protect her, pure determination to run to Krishna, to just run to Krishna. So what am I to learn? That when challenges come, which they do, and they will, they always will, when I am challenged in my spiritual path, with my spiritual process, that what do? I think of Uttara and I run to Krishna. I run to Krishna, because we are being assaulted every day by the Brahmastra of conditioned life. Every single day, we are assaulted. And so we, as aspiring devotees, if we can develop this mood of the 16-year-old that was going to be like probably one of the first single mothers, right? In the sense, of course, she had a whole family that was going to help her raise this child, and a whole transcendental family, but still she was a single mother at 16. So yes, Uttara is here to teach us that at a young age, a young child can teach us, how to be determined and how really to develop this affection and love and faith and be resolute in purpose. To know only Krishna, because Krishna is a supreme mystic. He's Yogeshwara. So thank you very much. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he writes a book on surrender, and I'm guessing most of you know this book. It says surrender is the key to eternal life. And I'm sure most of you have seen this book. And so he says in the beginning, in this one part of the book, he says, anti-material strategies. anti-material strategies. And he gives one strategy, and he starts it out with this verse from the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Krishna promises Arjuna. He says, Shapram bhavati dharmatma sachvak chantim negachati kunteya pratijanihi name bhaktya pranashati. He says, he quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace, O son of Kunti. Declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. My devotee never perishes. So Uttara is an example of teaching us that, how Krishna's devotees never perishes. Even when they go through different kinds of challenges and obstacles, they will never perish. And we have many examples of such. So I thank you very, very much. Where is it?
Thank you, Mother, for your wonderful class and explanations. I have one question.
Yes,
as you were speaking in the papers of today, Prabhupada mentioned that Krishna protects the progeny of Maharaj Kuru. So I was trying to relate it to the story of King Chitraketu, who lost his only son. The other wife poisoned the only son. And then Angira and Narada Muni has to visit him to console him.
Yes.
So my question there is, how is it that Krishna is protecting the progeny of Maharaj Kuru, and he did not protect an innocent child that was poisoned? Both of them were devotees. That is one part of the question. Then the second part of the question is, Krishna seems to lay emphasis on protecting the progeny of a man. Why didn't he just let the Pandavas go through what Chitraketu went through and let them take sannyas? He wants to keep his own progeny and take the other man's son.
Thank you, Kusha Prabhu. That's such a beautiful question. Yeah. Well, you know, Krishna, he's Krishna. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the first thing. He can do whatever he wants. And that's our service as conditioned souls to question him, and that's why we stay conditioned souls, right? However, yes. So that's the first part of my answer is that Krishna is God. Krishna is God. Ultimately, he can do whatever he wants to do. Okay. Secondly, though, because that's not. I mean, for an intelligent soul, that's just not an answer, right? It's like, all right, so what? You're telling me God, so what? God can just decide, you know, how he does what he does? Yeah, I'm saying basically he can. He decides however he wants to do, whatever he wants to do. However, what is so beautiful about our philosophy is that there's always different answers, different levels of answering. So Krishna is kind to everyone. Right? We know that Krishna is kind even to the demons. I mean, he liberates the demons. So what to speak of Krishna's devotees? Krishna says, I am partial? I'm not partial. However, he is partial to his devotees. He is partial to his devotees, even though he makes himself available for everyone. He's the Paramatma. He's in everyone's heart. He makes himself available. At the same time, though, in that pastime of Chitraketu, there are many lessons. Remember, Bhagavatam is just a conglomeration of lessons for us as conditioned souls. That's just it's just many different lessons for us to learn one way or another. Krishna puts it in all different ways, all different personalities he uses. And so in this situation with Chitraketu, remember, I think it's in that pastime where his son was a little concerned as to why was everybody being so concerned about it. This, you know, like he understood that he was not the body. So here, this basic principle of this pastime with Krishna and Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna spends all this time teaching Arjuna about him not being the body and how not to be attached to family, right? In a conditioned state, in a conditioned sense. Here we have this pastime. We have this beautiful pastime to teach us and remind us about our different kinds of attachments. And Krishna makes arrangements. It's like I heard Srivas Prabhu said when I listened to his class that that the demons, they have a purpose. And the demons, they come because oftentimes the demigods kind of get so caught up in their whole life, they sometimes may forget, right? And so the demons come to remind them, to remind everyone, that there is a supreme power, there's Krishna. And so in the same way, in this pastime with King Chitraketu, he kind of had some attachment to his child. And that attachment it's not that attachment per se to our children is quote unquote wrong or right. It's that the basic principle is for us to understand that we're not our bodies. That was the principle that I understood that Krishna was teaching in that particular pastime, that we're not these bodies. And yes, the persons that can cause us the greatest grief, the greatest distress, are those persons that we're most attached to. And in many cases, in family, our attachments are to our children more than anything. A mother is more attached to her children than she's attached to anything else. And so that attachment is wonderful once we are offering that attachment to Krishna. However, if we forget that everything is for Krishna's pleasure, everything is for Krishna's service, then then sometimes that can be there. And not that King Chitraketu was not conscious, he was conscious, but still that lesson of, Krishna gives and Krishna takes away. And when Krishna takes away, that's more of a blessing. Because when Krishna takes away, then we remember Krishna more. I can say in my own lifetime, when Bhaktitirtha Maharaj was taken away by Krishna, I can remember that like it was yesterday, actually. And I had a choice at that time, right? What do I do? This is someone that have nurtured my whole Krishna conscious life. I never had anyone else in my Krishna conscious life, no other guru person, like now there's many different gurus that we could take shelter of. And there always were. However, my only shelter was Bhaktitirtha Maharaj from the time I was a young girl. From the time I joined the Krishna consciousness movement, that was the person I met until he left his body, until he took his last breath. And so that was very difficult for me, very, very difficult. So that choice I had to make at that time, I remember Radhanath Swami asking me, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? And of course, Radhanath Maharaj, he knows he's a pure representative of the Lord. He's dedicated his life fully in service to the Lord. So he knew, he understood. However, he was asking me, bringing it to my awareness and letting me know, okay, now you got to make a decision. What will you do? And so I said to him, Maharaj, I'm going to go study Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm just going to go study Srimad Bhagavatam. Because I knew like Krishna's shelter for me was important. And I knew that the only way I could get Krishna's shelter at that time was for me to go immerse myself in Srimad Bhagavatam. So I went to Mayapur with my Guru Maharaj's ashes, me and Ekavira Prabhu. We took his ashes, and while we're waiting for his samadhi to be built, I started studying Srimad Bhagavatam by the mercy of having Burajan Prabhu as my teacher. And what was really interesting about that whole experience of having Burajan Prabhu as my teacher, being suffering like anything, grief that I cannot even begin to explain to anyone. I'm sure many of you have had that grief. However, for me, it's just kind of multiplied times. So what happened for me, and I'm going to close here, is I started studying this canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1. And it's this exact pastime that we're reading now, exact pastime. When Kunti was there at the chariot, when Krishna is leaving, and Kunti's praying to Krishna, she starts these famous, wonderful prayers. And I realized at that moment, even Krishna leaves. Even Krishna leaves. Even Krishna leaves. And I remember just tears pouring. And I was like, Krishna leaves. Krishna leaves us. He leaves us. And of course, I've heard it a million times, theoretically. But to experience it at that moment, and Burajan speaking in the way that he does with that, it just caught my heart. And that was the beginning of my healing process. That was the beginning. So, so back to that pastime, there are many lessons for us to learn from these pastimes. If Ganga Prasad or anybody else is on the call that would like to add, Salika, Sahadev, anybody to that answer, please feel free to.
We have more questions up. Ganga Prasad, do you want to say something before we take questions from Salika and Sahadev? They have questions. Ganga Prasad, please, your mic is on.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Your answers are very appropriate, that they don't need to be some addition. And I'm grateful for your accolades, even though I don't deserve them. But thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Salika Prabhu, you have a question. Salika?
Hare Krishna.
Haribol, Salika Prabhu. Haribol.
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada, Gurudev.
Yeah, nice to see you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much for this wonderful class. It's so beautiful. Each and every time it's always beautiful class. I'm really appreciative. Sorry, I had to put my video off most of the time. I came to the farm this morning and just quickly to check the farm and then go back to the temple, but I got caught up with something, so I couldn't go back. So I had to connect on the phone. So that's why I'm a little bit not able to put on my video most of the time. I just had to come into the car now to be able to speak with you.
Krishna's mystic potency.
Thank you.
Yes, Prabhu.
My question is this. You emphasize so much in the class what we need to learn in the verse. And I was listening to your narration and giving some of the pastimes. And you explained the pastimes of Krishna having to be a mediator to go to Duryodhana and then try to persuade Duryodhana to avoid the war. But then we also see that in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna told Arjuna that these people have already killed all of them. I've killed all of them. So just kill them and take glory. So now the question is, when a living entity does something else and thinks something else, we've seen this in human traits, that they mean something else, but they do something else. But here, Krishna, he already wants all of these people to be killed, but yet he has physically gone to persuade them to avoid the war. So how do we understand this pastime of Krishna? Is there something else?
Yeah, thank you. That's a beautiful question. Thank you so much. And I'm very encouraged that you went to the farm. It's always nice to hear that the devotees are, engaged in farm activities. That was one of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's desires, is to make sure that we are able to at least have some of our own cassava and some of our own yams. That we don't have to depend on getting it from somewhere else. So that question. So remember when Krishna went to Duryodhana, so Krishna's whole, everything Krishna does is just like a playbook, right? It's his playbook, and he has his playbook and how he plays out his scenes in the playbook. So the playbook is, before you fight with your enemy, you do your best to convince them not to fight, right? Even in regular life, before two people get into an argument, you first try to see how to have peace. And then when the peace doesn't work, then it's like, okay, well, we're gonna fight, right? So Krishna, he went to Duryodhana and to all of them, not just Duryodhana, to the whole family, to try to request for peace on behalf of Arjuna. on behalf of the Pandavas. Because remember, Pandavas didn't really, especially Yudhishthira, he kind of, for a long time, he didn't really want to fight. When he did decide to fight, then he was, he's a Kshatriya, so he's going to fight. He's more of a peaceful person. So Krishna went, yes, he did go to ask to mediate, to do that mediation work. And at the same time, Krishna knew that that's a part of the playbook, right? That's a part of the playbook. It's just like, and I'm going to use a mundane example here, very mundane, because I do a lot of work with grahastas. So husband and wife, they're having a conflict, and you're a mediator, and you go to try to mediate the situation to help them to perhaps save their marriage. But you kind of know that they have allowed themselves to become so covered by their different, tendencies. You kind of know, like, they're not gonna survive the marriage. You know that already. They're not gonna survive this marriage because their egos are just so caught in their perspectives. And so that was the case, right, of Duryodhana. His ego was so caught in his perspective. Krishna already knew that. And so he already knew that they would have to go to war. He already knew that Duryodhana's ego was so huge that Duryodhana would not concede. So it's kind of like that, even in our own lives. Even in our own lives, we see that, and we can tell if we work with these situations enough, we can tell, this is not going to work, right? Or even the devotees sometimes, devotees, just regular devotees, you see them having some conflict over something where they just have different perspectives, and they just won't give up their perspective, right? They just won't understand how they will not concede to how to be peaceful, how to make a peaceful situation, how to make a peaceful alignment, how to make a peaceful commitment with each other to move forward, right? To make a difference. They just won't do it. And so as a mediator, you already know that. You just know this is just going to be like a gridlock situation. They're not going to get out of it. Maybe, maybe some years it may take. So Krishna, we're just conditioned souls. I'm just, you know what I mean? We're conditioned souls. However, we do have this awareness. And Krishna being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna being Yogeshwar, Krishna being the Supreme Mystic, Krishna being the knower of everything, Krishna being everything. He knew that they were going to go to war. But at the same time, he had to do the playbook. We all got to do our playbooks. Yeah, so it's in our state, in the conditioned state, it's very unfortunate because what's going to happen to us is that we're just going to be recycled with our playbooks. Even with Duryodhana, right? In that playbook with Krishna, because he was in a relationship, not the best, but he was in a relationship with Krishna, Duryodhana got benefited. And so that's why it's so important as us as aspiring devotees to just stay in Krishna's camp. don't get out of Krishna's camp, because we still have some of those tendencies, those tendencies from 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And those tendencies, like Prabhupada explains, like a fan, it takes a while, right, before it totally goes away. So we stay in Krishna's camp, and if we stay in Krishna's camp, we'll be protected. So yes, he told Arjuna, this is what's going to happen. Of course, he's also a playbook, right? The playbook. He's trying to convince Arjuna to not be attached to his family. So he uses everything. You got to use everything in your playbook when you try to mediate situations, every single thing. So Krishna teaches us by his example. He teaches us, and it's just so beautiful. If we can watch the scenes, that's what I try to do. When I read a verse, I just make it a drama. Look at this drama. How's it playing out? And what am I to learn from it today?
Thank you, Mother. Our next question is from Sahadev Prabhu. Sahadev, please.
Saha. Okay, Saha.
Hare Krishna, Mother.
Hare Bol, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Again, thank you for the class.
Thank you for your determination, Sahadev. I always hear you ask these beautiful questions.
I have two questions because I might not be able to ask the other ones. I'm asking both together now. First question is, Krishna says in the Gita that the conditioned loving entity thinks himself the doer, but the actual doer is the super soul. Now, if the actual doer is the super soul, when the loving entity does something wrong, then why should Krishna punish him? Because he's not the actual doer. The super soul is the actual doer. That's the first question. And then the second question is, even in this age, which is Kali Yuga, for a girl to marry at age 16 is considered that age. So how then the Uttara get married at age 16 to a young man who was 17, and they were in Dwapara years? How were they allowed to marry at such tender age? Those are my two questions. Hare Krishna.
Well, maybe I'll start with the second question first, because you know, when you get older, your memory of things is not the same. So I can remember the first question, and I pray that the Lord in the heart will let me remember the first question. So the second question, okay, so you know, even in Kali Yuga, even when I was in Africa, actually when I went to Ghana, which was in 1981 or something, 81 or 82, that's when I went to Ghana. I was in Nigeria before that. Maybe it was even in 83, 82 or 83 when I went to Ghana. So when we went to Ghana, there was only 3 of us, you know, and we lived in this house where it was like living like in a forest. At that time, that part of Ghana, it was in Accra, but it was still like foresty. I remember having to walk through like trees, walk through the forest, you know, to get to like a road. So we had a really nice house there. And across from our house, there was a Muslim family. And I remember, you know, because just me being who I am, I get to know things, I get to know people. And I remember like trying to communicate with the family and trying to learn things about the family. And they were arranging for their daughter, who was, I think, about 14, to get married. And that was one of my first experiences of seeing all this grandiose arrangement for a young girl. So the point I'm making here, and then later, I experienced it much more when I went to Kano. Again, you know, I went there not as a devotee. I went there to work there. I mean, I was a devotee, but I was a covered devotee. I was like, I couldn't let people know I was a devotee because I was working then in a different capacity. And so a part of my work was in Kano for a long time up north. And up north, it was very common for young girls to get married. So even in Kali Yuga now, it's still a part of the culture. It's still a part of the culture. In the West, it's not a part of the culture for sure. Because in the West, marriage is not a part of the culture at all, period. So in cultures, in previous culture, that was a part of the culture. The father protected the daughter and to a certain age. And then the child, even sometimes the child was promised in marriage just when they were born. You know, they're promised to somebody, right? So, and then they're not going to live together till they get older. So it was a part of the culture actually to be married at a young age. And even in Kali Yuga, you can still find that in cultures that, you know, that protect their girls. It's, yeah, you know, it's a part of protection, really. It's hard to understand that in the West, very difficult, because our understanding of protection and care is so skewed. I mean, it's just different. So yes, in previous ages, it was that, if I'm understanding your question correctly, it was that, yes, people got married at a young age. Now, the first question, which was a question about Paramatma, the Lord within the heart. And maybe somebody's memory is really good. Please help me to remember Claudia's first question.
Why is the super soul? Super soul is mentioned to be the doer. Bhota Bhakta Maheshwara. He's the
Yes.
observer, he's the approver, and he's also the super soul. Why is the living entity blamed for whatever they do? That's the question. Why does the giver get blamed?
So the super soul is a witness, right? The super soul is witnessing, is a permitter. At the same time, because we have free will to choose, that is the love that Krishna has given to us, Krishna is giving to us constantly, and he's giving us that ability to choose. In one sense, it's not, I mean, we think we really have that ability to choose. At the same time, though, it's not that, I mean, we are choosing in one sense. We are choosing. However, ultimately, all of us need to make a choice of the Lord. Now, the super soul, the Lord within the heart, the Paramatma, Kishore Vishnu, there's two souls there, right? The Jiva and the Lord. The Lord is the witness. The Lord is watching. The Lord is waiting, like Prabhupada explains, two birds on a tree. So the Lord is waiting to see, okay, you have choices. What will be your choice? What choice are you going to make? And then the Lord fulfills our desires based on our choices. Why are we to blame? Why is it that we are blamed? Well, first of all, I remember now your question, good and bad. And so when we read the Sastra, we learn that there really isn't anything as good and bad. That's all our perceptions, right? We label things. This is good, this is bad. We label it. So there are things that may not be favorable. Yes, there may be things not favorable. So what's not favorable is not practicing devotional service. That's not favorable for the living entity, because we understand that that by practicing devotional service, one becomes free, or one becomes connected to understanding the super soul, right? If a person is not engaged in devotional service, it's very difficult even to understand anything about the super soul. So for a living entity that is engaged in conditioned life, that is not aware of devotional service, that's not aware of practicing bhakti. And when I say practicing bhakti, I mean developing love for God. If a person is not engaged in that, then of course that person then is engaged in material activity, and they will not be so connected to the super soul. And so the super soul is not, we say that the super soul is guiding everything, and the Lord in the heart, yes, is guiding everything. At the same time, Achincha Veda Veda Tattva, the Lord in the heart is giving us free will to make choices. And those choices determine, whether we get labeled bad or good, labeled. And depending on different cultures, depending on different environments, good mean one thing and bad means another thing. So, so it's to me, for me anyway, and like I said, somebody else can comment on this. For me, what helps me to understand whenever I hear a question that's like comparing this or that, putting labels on things, I think Achinta Veda Veda Tattva, because simultaneously one and different. Yes, the living entity is being guided by the Supreme Lord, by the Lord within the heart, Paramatma Kishore Dakshaya Vishnu, at the same time, simultaneously. The living entity is given free will. Based on the living entity's free will, the living entity will make choices to act. Will they act unfavorable in terms of not getting connected to the super soul? Yes, absolutely. And most of the people on the planet are acting unfavorably. So they're not having any dialogue, if you will, no dialogue with understanding that the super soul is waiting to guide them. So I hope. Okay. I don't know, Ganga, you're here, so please jump in whenever.
Thank you, Mother. Okay.
I'm not a pundit. I'm just a practical applicator of bhakti. That's me. I'm just like, let me put it to practice. Let's make this practical. Let's make this practical. Okay,
yeah, there is a comment on the forum from George Omega. He said what he learned from Shiva's Prabhu was that the reason why young girls marry early is to allow them to marry early is how women practice celibacy, because she will not know any other man apart from her husband. So that's what she learned. So he learned from Shiva. It's a comment.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah, I mean, even Prabhupada tells us, right? Prabhupada tells us about, arranged marriages for young children, very young, very, very young. And they don't live together or anything. However, the families arranged a marriage. Of course, they're practicing celibacy. Until a time when they are together. Until a time when they can, be together as husband and wife. But for in many families today, it's known that, oh, this is going to be my husband. Yes. Or the husband knows that's going to be my wife. And of course, there's celibacy. Yes. Until they consummate in a relationship and marriage. And actually, to be honest with you, as a part of the Grahasta Vision team, that's one of the things we advocate. We advocate celibacy until marriage. And celibacy doesn't matter what age, whether you're, 16, 15, 20, 30, 40. Yeah, we try to remind devotees, we try to remind people that once you start engaging, once we start, let's say, not being celibate, first of all, it affects our bodies, especially it affects the body of the men. And secondly, it doesn't always, it can divert someone from understanding the real purpose of sex life, which is procreation for children. That's a very delicate topic to talk about. So not going there, just mentioning it.
We have another question from Constantina Sokaris.
Constantina, hey, Haribol.
Hare Krishna, Haribol. So the curiosity has gotten the best of me, but before I say anything, I want to thank you for offering this class. It's so thorough and easy to absorb when we take our time with the Srimad Bhagavatam and unpack it, and so beautifully as you have. I keep thinking about when you said these cities and how one can change their physical size and all of the different mystiques that we have. Is this also not physical, but in the astral and causal realm? I don't know why this question keeps coming up in my mind. It's not that important, but I'm curious. Would you know the answer to that? I know.
Constantina, thank you so very much. Every question is important. Every question. That means Super Soul, the Lord in the heart, is directing us, and you're making a choice to ask the question. So yes, yes, absolutely, because these mystic cities are really on a subtle plane, right? It's not gross. It's not like, we can do different things with our physical body. Like you see Hatha Yoga, you can do all kinds of things with our physical bodies. However, we can do so much more with our subtle bodies. So much more. I mean, so much more. Yes. And devotees, we have these actual mystic cities. And devotees, because we've been yogis already in previous lives. And so sometimes, we do have certain powers. It's not that we focus on them, and it's not that we don't try to utilize them unless, of course, it's in service to Krishna. We are aware and we use them in service to Krishna. I've known devotees on that level of consciousness that utilize different powers they may have to serve Krishna. So devotees are endowed with many of these types of mystic potencies. At the same time, though, because they don't put any emphasis on it, they don't develop them. It's because it's not important, because what's important to a devotee, an aspiring devotee, is to develop the mystic potency of having love for Krishna. That is the greatest mystic potency that we can ever have. However, yes, many people are enamored by these different types of mystic cities, and it's very subtle, and it's in the cosmos for sure. And there's so much to learn about them from the Srimad Bhagavatam, so much. Yeah, and Radhanath Swami, he was living with mystics most of his adult life, actually. His adult life, he lived with mystics in the Himalayas and different places in India. And his book, I don't know if you've seen that book, The Journey Home.
Yes.
I'm sure you have, yes. And so you can, so there's so many ways we can understand mystic cities there. My own spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Maharaj, he understood many things, many different things from in different aspects of things subtly. However, he was, a dear, dedicated disciple of Srila Prabhupada and a dear devotee of Krishna. And so that was his focus. I hope that was helpful, Constantina.
I have a question, another one. I had, that was very clear, by the way, and it satiated my curiosity. I could feel it in my cells. Someone had asked me once, what is your bhakti? And they became a little bit maniacal about it. And I got concerned, and I said, my goodness, am I not who I think I am? Or maybe I'm a phony. But it was an actually asana yoga teacher who would always come up to me and say that. And I thought she was eventually giving me a hard time. There was something about her that made me realize she would come into my face to compete with me and say, what is your bhakti and what do you do? And I've explained it so many times, and I realized, is there some kind of bhakti where people just do one thing, which is maybe just take care of deities, but then let the rest wash away? Or is it like you said, it is what you're saying is the love for God. So in everything that I do, even when I'm not with devotees, to be serviceable, to be an example. And even if I'm laughed at, even if I am disrespected, that continuing on that journey is what's making me happy. But I've never heard, what is my bhakti? I've never heard that question except that one teacher. Is there such a thing as knowing what your bhakti is? Does that make sense? I don't even know if I'm making an intelligent question here. I feel like I'm a little embarrassed I even brought it up now.
Well, Constantina, I'm very grateful that you are vulnerable to ask your question, even though for you it might not make sense. I can make sense in terms of my understanding of your question. And so from what I am understanding of your question, what is your bhakti? Well, bhakti means love, right? Bhakti is our love for the Lord. So firstly, I would suggest that when someone asks you a question that you're not aware of, ask them, what do you mean? Please explain to me, what do you mean by that? Because oftentimes we are, sometimes we're told certain things or we're asked certain things and we form perceptions or we form our own stories based on what's in our own head. And we don't usually know what the other person might be meaning because we just simply didn't ask. Like, what did you mean when you said that? However, in answer to your question, there's a sutra that says if God had wanted you to be someone else, he would have made someone else. So Constantina, be happy with who you are and where you are, and know that you're developing love for Krishna according to your capacity, and be happy with that, right? Be happy with that. And always endeavor to learn more, to learn more, as you are doing, being on this class, and always ask questions. When somebody asks you a question, ask them a question back.
If the response is, what do you do? Of course I've asked, what do you mean by that? You keep asking me. And the question was, what do you do? Do you worship something? Do you worship a deity? Like, what do you do? Do you, and I'm thinking, why are they so angry? And I felt confused. I started to question maybe the clothes I'm wearing in yoga class. Maybe I wore makeup. I started to really, I can't wear Tulsi because I'm allergic to it. And I'm falling short physically. And then I don't know what made me think about this again, but I don't think that, I think it is one exercise that we choose, one practice, giving service at the temple. That's what was going on. Like there was an accountant's, like an inventory of what is it? What is your bhakti? And I'm like, I don't think you're using the word correctly. I don't think you're using your understanding. And then I started to wonder, in all the years since about 1993, I have never heard anybody say that to me. And I didn't know, I didn't want to even bring it up until now. So even if I ask, I felt a little bit threatened and intimidated that something about me. I drive a simple car, I drive a Prius. But if I drove an Escalade, $100,000 car, what difference would it make? It's all Krishna's anyway. I can't take it with me when I leave this body. I don't think like that. So I was confused. What is it about me that makes somebody think I need to be interrogated on my Krishna? And she was not a devotee. I mean, in a way, perhaps, but I am still concerned about something I'm doing that somebody would approach me. So I guess in this case, what I'm hearing is people don't know themselves. People do not know themselves what bhakti is. And I think whatever it is they think that it is, I am not performing. But that might be the better phrase. I'm not performing a particular way.
Well, I think you answered your question. I mean,
I think so too.
So it's nice that you're being reflective, and it's nice that you're thinking about what is it about you that might let someone ask you those kinds of questions. Again, another sutra for you. Courage is not standing up to others, but it's based on staying true to yourself. So wherever you are, we are on all of us are on different levels of understanding bhakti. So perhaps that person is on a certain level of their understanding of bhakti. And if we can develop more of a mood of not being judgmental based on where another person might be, then we can be the teacher for those persons. So courage is not about standing up to others. It's about staying true to yourself. So being true to yourself, Constantina, is you sound like someone that's you have a voice, you speak out. So speak out with your realization of bhakti.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you for a nice class. We have more questions or comments. Tom Suya. Oh, that's something to say. Please, your mic is on. You're muted, please. You can speak.
Tom Sawyer. Wow. I also see one of my students, Alex, on here today. Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much for being here. Tom Sawyer.
So we take question from Keshava Prabhu while we wait for the other people.
Oh, is Tom asking a question? Was Tom asking a question?
He left a comment on the chat room.
Okay.
So his comment is, Sahadev Prabhu said Paramatma is the doer. That verse doesn't say that. Gita 3:27 says rather that nature is the doer. Of course, nature here means our conditioning from the past. So the living entity is forced to act based on his past preferences. So like Mataji rightly said, the super soul is the witness and the permitter of our choice and not the doer.
Yeah. Our activities are carried out by the modes of material nature, right? Goodness, passion, and ignorance.
Yes.
Hmm.
Keshava, please, you have the floor.
Keshava.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mataji, for your class. I was planning on making a comment, but then I decided not to say anything. But when Konstantina said something, I felt I had to. Well, I decided to say it anyway. But in the beginning of the class, you were just talking about all these Asta cities, mystic powers, and different things. And I wasn't sure if these were things that happened in bygone ages in the Satya Yuga or something like this. But I remember being in Delhi in '95. And there was an Indian body devotee from Canada also in Delhi at that time. And he was one of the major water collectors when they did that Sahasra Tirtha Jal, bathing of Prabhupada with 1,008 different samples of water collected all throughout India. And he told me he was on the road for quite a few months, but he said he went to some part of Northeast India, maybe Assam or something. And he actually saw a woman in a village pick up a long branch of a tree. And she sat on that thing just like it was a broom, and she just took off into the air, into the sky. And he was very, very cynical about these kind of things. He didn't have too much faith in the Vedas, but when he saw this, he resumed his devotional practices again. So I just found that kind of interesting. And then you were also speaking about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj having that ESP, or that ability to kind of tune into people and to know where they are on a psychic level. I only spent a matter of hours with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj in 2004. I picked him up from the Toronto airport. I brought him back to the temple. He took a bath, and then I took him down to the Rath Yatra. But just in that brief half-hour drive to the temple, the things he was telling me, I knew that he was he was on a very high level. He was on a very, very high level. He told me things about myself. He told me things about my life. It was known to very few people, and he was able to really, how you can say, kind of tap into my mental and emotional state at that time, addressing some issues that I knew I was dealing with. And so, I could get an appreciation a little bit for this psychic phenomenon, I guess you could say, and more respect for Vedic culture. And it kind of cemented my conviction and helped me develop faith in what we're trying to follow. Anyway, thank you for your class. I appreciate that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Keshava. Thank you for sharing your voice. It is always nice to hear devotees share. And each and every one of our voices is important. Sometimes we don't realize that. We don't, or maybe sometimes we may not be encouraged that our voice is important. Whether or not we label it, right or wrong, bad or good, intelligent, not intelligent, knowledgeable, not knowledgeable, that's on us or the other person. However, it's so important to really honor the fact that Krishna gave us this voice and we can use it and share. And as you said, Keshava, that there are ways to actually, but the sastras have everything. And so in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, they actually give you ways to get these supernatural powers, even now as human beings. So if you read these Yoga Sutras, there's a Yoga Sutra that explains that birth, medicine, mantras, penance, austerities. These are all different ways that we can acquire some of these powers. And I'm speaking just regular, people that are performing austerities, that they can get some powers. For the devotee, as I said, our power is being able to serve the Lord's devotees and to serve the Lord. And with that comes all of these different powers. Thank you for sharing, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mother. Any other question, please? In the
Shri
absence of no more question.
Oh my gosh, I see Sri Shapanishad on here. Sri Shapanishad is one of the,
you have the floor, please.
Shapanishad, she's actually she was a childhood friend of our spiritual master, our revered spiritual master, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. They grew up together as teenagers.
Hi, Hari Bol Mataji. Please accept my obeisance. All glories, all glories, all glories. I'm just so ecstatic about the Srimad Bhagavatam. it's the uh, I don't even have the words to express it because it's just so unique and so special to me. In reference to our guru, Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, yes, he had quite a bit of mystical powers. Okay, we were always in search of trying to be able to find out our purpose, and we found out that when the Mataji was speaking of bhakti, we actually found out through coming to Krishna consciousness or becoming Krishna conscious or trying to become Krishna conscious, what our bhakti is all about, what we're supposed to be doing, how we are developing that love for Krishna. And that's a journey, but it's a very special journey. And I'm going to add, there were so many things that you covered. There were so many wonderful questions. But what really touched me about the Srimad Bhagavatam when we were speaking about marriage, I think Sahadev asked a question about the young lady being, or the child being married to a senior, and according to the culture. I was reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the fourth canto, the Sati and Shiva, uh, they're they're joining together, and her disappearance of her leaving her body. And I found out while reading that Sati was not of puberty when she married Lord Shiva. You know, her father Daksha was told to give his child to Lord Shiva. And his father, of course, Daksha's father is Brahma, and he was following that instruction. But I didn't know that she was not of age to have children. And I thought that was very surprising. You know, that was, something that I didn't know. When I thought of Sati, I always thought that she was a grown woman. I had no idea that she had not reached puberty yet. So that's something right there in the Srimad Bhagavatam that shares with us how a child, when they're given to a senior, that they may not be of age yet. And she was married to Lord Shiva. So that would be nice for everyone to go back and just read that chapter. And the other thing that I want to share that was very unique, when you had mentioned something else. Oh, my mind forgets too, Mother. I can't remember the thought that I wanted to share.
Mm.
I think I can sum it up. Well, this wonderful, unique gift and blessing that we've been given, this opportunity, as our guru would say, as Bhakti Tirtha Swami would say. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than this. We have came upon a unique, wonderful science of learning and showing and actually engaging in how to serve and please God. I just think that, the more we read, the more we chant, we'll develop, if that's what you want to develop, because Krishna grants all of your wishes. The Paramatma is there in your heart all of the time, nonstop, lifetime after lifetime. There was a devotee that mentioned that the other day. He says, who can you think of that's there with you all of the time, never leaves, 24 hours a day, lifetime after lifetime? I mean, can you think of anyone that's there with you all of the time like that? No one. No one is there like that with you all the time but Krishna. So we're never alone. We just have to realize that. And I can go on and on and on because there's so many things that's happening, in the world and today and with people. And I just love being a part of this wonderful, unique family of God conscious Vaishnavas. Hari Hari Bol. Hari Krishna. Thank you, Mother Vrajalila, for being such a unique a person of how to help explain people and become better at being a servant. I love that way of your serving. I love your service mood, your attitude. I really appreciate you. Thank you so very much.
Hare Krishna Shisha Panishad, it's only the mercy of our revered Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. I'm just always praying. Every day I pray to him, please, please, please keep me in service and keep me wanting to love devotees. Please, my dear Guru Maharaj. Ishapanishat, I think Kusha, you need to get Ishapanishat on this platform. She has so much to share.
Mother,
Kusha,
you have to fix her.
Okay, I will do that.
You are with her in the States.
Actually, speaking of fixing her tomorrow we're having Yashoda Mai will be speaking on this platform for the first time.
How do you go?
Yashoda Mai is one of the first initiated disciples of Bhaktitirtha Maharaj. She was initiated by proxy, by letter, when in I believe 1985 or 86, when Guru Maharaj started giving initiation in Africa, 86, he's the first initiation was by letter because she was here in America with me. Gurudev had brought her here with me when he did his first initiation, and then he did the initiation for her here in West Virginia, in New Vrindavan, and he had already sent her by letter her name and everything. So she's the first woman disciple. So she will be speaking on this platform tomorrow for the first time. It's a real treat. She's from Nigeria. She's actually from England. However, she was born in England. However, you know, at that age, when you're supposed to be married, you start getting involved in secular material life. And so her parents, being the best parents, sent her to Nigeria. And so she ended up in Nigeria going to school. And that's how she met her spiritual master, by being in school in Nigeria.
Thank you, Mother. Sahadev Prabhu have a comment on the platform, still on the topic, which
he said,
yeah, he said chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita, conclusion, the perfection of renunciation, text 13, translation. Almighty Arjuna, according to the Vedanta, there are 5 causes for the accomplishment of all action. Now learn of this from me. Then text 14, the place of action, the body, the performer, the various senses, the many different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the super soul. These are the 5 factors of action. So he's still portraying that the super soul is the doer of our activities, not really we. Even though the nature is also the doer or the witness, as super soul said, Prabhu said before, super soul is the witness. Sadev is still emphasizing that the super soul is the doer of these actions that man performs in the 18th chapter.
Okay, so again, Saha, we want to understand that the Lord is definitely in charge of everything, right? We understand that in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is in charge of everything. Krishna is aware of everything. At the same time, the living entity is covered. That was a major part of what we're talking about today, how the living entity is covered. And as the living entity is covered by this lust, right, then we have the choice to stay in this lusty atmosphere, or we have the choice to choose to follow the principles that's given to us by the super soul, So super soul is always guiding our actions. However, material nature, the modes of material nature are what's directing our activities once we are once we are accepting our conditioned reality. We in one sense, it's not really a reality. However, we have made it a reality, this conditioned sense of who we think we are. In that conditioned state, then the Lord arranges the 3 modes of material nature to conduct our activities. It's still arranged by the Lord, but the Lord himself has nothing to do with it, right? We understand that from Krishnadas Kaviraj in the beginning of the Adalila when he explains about the Paramatma. The Paramatma is the Lord in the heart guiding us spiritually. However, the Lord, he arranges different ways for us to fulfill our different desires and our different choices. Again, that's the best way. I mean, that's the best way for me to be able to explain right now. However, if somebody else would like to add, please feel free to do that. I mean, our false ego, which is basically that last covering for us in our conditioned state, that false ego, that is not directed by the super soul. It's directed by material energy. Krishna arranges that for us. Anybody else would like to add anything?
Yeah, I would like to say all this philosophical is good. Once you do Bhakti Shastri, everything is purely explained how the super soul is involved, either he's the doer or he's not the doer. So if anyone wants to decode who is the doer, we encourage the person to do Bhakti Shastri to get the answer. Because the gurus have been telling everyone to do Bhakti Shastri, when the whole world comes to Mayapur or even online, so you can know how the super soul gets involved in our activities or not. That's a secret. The answer is not for free. Anyway.
Thank you, Kusha, Prabhu, and thank you for plugging Bhakti Sastri. Actually, in Ghana and Nigeria, I am so grateful to the devotees that are offering Bhakti Sastri there for everyone's benefit. And I'm especially grateful to the Matajis that are taking Bhakti Sastri. I haven't seen Rati recently. I don't know who's still taking it. However, I know initially some of the Matajis had registered. And so I'm really grateful.
Yeah, she's still there.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Please, we ask all devotees to unmute yourselves. Let's chant Hare Krishna for Mother for coming to the platform. Thank you, Mother, for a nice class.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol Gayatri, Hare Hare.
Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Bol Hare Sanja, Hare Bol Saha.
Hare Krishna Mata, thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Jai.
Oh,
Hare
what a lovely
Bol.
Sangha, such a lovely Sangha.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kamaniya. Thank you very much for being here, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Haribol, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Constantina, where are you from, Constantina?
Fort Lee, New Jersey.
Haribol, thank you so much for being here. Thank you very much.
Can I say,
please, thank you.
Constantina, I just wanted to share with
Yeah.
you that
Hi, yes.
because you
Who
were
am I-
shy about asking a question. And,
I was actually embarrassed because I didn't want to take up valuable time. That's
because
me.
sometimes we're moved to ask other people's questions that we think, oh, this is not an important enough question, but then 5 other devotees are so grateful you asked it. I just wanted to
thank you. Thank you so much. And I believe that. Thank you. Thank
Hare
you for
Krishna.
making me feel good and welcomed. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for all the devotees that came on the class today. Thank you so very much.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna
Hare Bol.
Haribol. I miss all of you so much.